Hello, Dave. It's so nice to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Beautiful, and thank you so very much for being here, my man. You see, I truly appreciate you. And you see, Dave, oftentimes I love to thank my guests for two things. And I do this so often to the point where it has become my anthem. So, firstly, my man, I
Hmm.
want to say thank you so very much for investing in yourself. See, Dave, you are on this platform right now because you did invest that in yourself. And oftentimes, my
Hmm.
man, I love to make reference to the amazing mango tree. They say some couple of months back, I was on a particular road, and just by the roadside, Dave, there was this very tall, unattractive mango tree. And I
Hmm.
use the word unattractive because the mango tree's got no mangoes on it, and the leaves were all dry. So I just walked past it and I went my way. But you see, my man, just recently I was on that same road. And this time around,
Hmm.
a lot's changed about the mango tree, you see. The mango tree caught my attention pretty good from a distance. And immediately I got the urge to move so close to it, of which I did, and it wowed me because now the
Hmm.
mango tree's got a lot of mangoes on it, beautiful green leaves and healthy branches, and not just mangoes now, Dave. I'm talking about ripe mangoes. It was such a lovely experience that day, and I was so excited. Here is my point. The fact that you dedicated your time, energy, and resources to becoming the amazing Dave that you are today, that alone has made it impossible for me to skip you. And that's why you got the request from me to be on the show because I was attracted to the fruit of all that you're doing, your philosophies, your work, the impact your work is having, and how you are offering your solutions, my man. These stuff's so beautiful. And just before I sent you that request, I said to myself, I've got to benefit from these beautiful things Dave is doing. And not only me now, because I don't want to look selfish, and even with the audience. And here we had a day with the amazing Dave. So thank you so very much for doing that to yourself. And secondly, thank you for saying yes to the invite. Because if you had said nope, there was nothing Elisha could do about it. Thanks so much, my man.
Yeah, no worries. Just try to stay open to opportunities.
That's right. That's right. And I got that. Beautiful. So let's get started. You see, I am quite excited to have you on the show today, Dave, for some reasons. Firstly, my interest in knowledge seeking. I believe in order for one to transition from a terrible situation to that of a beautiful one, Dave, I believe it takes the application of knowledge, quality information, and not just knowledge alone, but the application of it. And you see, my man, ever since I discovered that light in the Hebrew means knowledge and darkness ignorance, I've been so keen to knowledge seeking. Why? Because I do not want to remain in the dark. So that's going to make our conversation today very important to me and even to the listeners. And the second reason why I'm excited to have the incredible Dave on the show is for the sake of the audience. They say, Dave, we live in an age where information is as abundant as grains of sand. We've got
Hmm.
lots of information flying out there. So those folks trust me for quality, eye-opening, and very important informations, of which I am totally convinced, my man, that our conversation is going to be insightful and impactful. So, for that reason, Dave, let's get started with your introduction. Talk to us about your personal or your professional journey, because right now we are so curious. Want to know how Dave got here. Then, afterwards, I've gotten some beautiful questions for you. Okay, Dave, over to you.
All right. Yeah, thanks. So, most of my career has been as an entrepreneur. When I got out of college, I was in the mortgage banking industry for for about 10 or 12 years. And then after that, got into franchising and started my own, my first franchise business with a couple of partners. At the time we started it, which was 2008, there were the industry that we're in, which is home accessibility, so stair lifts and ramps and things for people that have disabilities. That industry was very fragmented. Lots of local dealers and operators throughout the U.S. that would provide this equipment to people who needed it in their communities, but there wasn't really any national company that had a national footprint or a recognized brand in the space. And so my partners and I recognized that as an opportunity. So we launched a company in '08 called 101 Mobility, and we started franchising that business in 2010, and it took off and ended up doing really well. In fact, all of the franchises that we awarded our very first year in 2010 are still there today, 15 years later, and that system has now gone on to around 100 locations throughout North America. My partners and I had sold the company along the way, and I stuck around for a number of years after that. But in 2020, I left that company and started exploring new entrepreneurial opportunities. I stayed in franchising and helped another franchisor who was trying to grow their business, get some scale. So I met the founder of a youth sports franchise that had 3 locations at the time and helped her get some scale up to about 50 locations. And then right around this time last year, I started refocusing my attention back to the access and mobility industry, just having been out of it for a number of years, and recognized that the industry is still poised to grow a lot over the next couple of decades, primarily because of 2 reasons. One, you've got an aging demographic here in the U.S. The baby boomer population is starting to turn 80 this year. The very first of that wave is happening this year. And over the next 15 years or so, there'll be a lot of people getting into their 80s pretty much every year. And so the mobility and access industry is really expected to grow a lot for that reason. The other reason is that most people, as they get older, want to stay in their home as long as they can. Like the surveys all come back like 90%, want to quote unquote age in place, meaning that they want to, grow old in their own home, not have to go to a third party facility, nursing home, or, assisted living or something along those lines. And so those 2 factors lead to a fair amount of growth over a pretty extended period of time, literally the next 10 to 15 years for our industry. So I decided to launch Lyftology because I felt like, in the U.S., there's still a big need for this type of equipment. There are now a couple of companies that have national footprints, like 101 Mobility, the company that I founded, but there's still only a few. And we feel like, the population deserves the right, experiences and responsiveness to their needs. And we feel like we're in a good position to step in and meet that need.
I tell you, and that's one of the traits of a true leader, solving problems not to extort the people, but to impact the whole system. I love that. I love that. That's a beautiful one. And thank you for thinking ahead. You're thinking ahead. You mentioned the next 15 years now. A lot of elderlies are going to be turning 80. It's beautiful. So let us talk about franchise. So how do one know if a franchise is the right fit?
Sure. Good question. So a lot of people look at franchising as an easier way to become a business owner as opposed to starting entirely on your own. And in large part, that is true. It is faster and easier to join an existing franchise system and take advantage of the systems and branding and other things that they've already, and training and so forth, that they've already created to get maybe a faster and safer start. What franchising does not do for you is do the work. And so a lot of times people underestimate that, even whether it's a franchise or not, while a franchise may have a lot of systems and infrastructure in place, the building of the business still ultimately comes down to the franchise owner. So what we look for in a franchise candidate are folks that have the right mindset around growth, they're ready to roll up their sleeves and get to work, and really spend the time that's necessary to build a meaningful business. Part of that comes in the form of team building skills. If you want to grow and scale your business, you've really got to build your team, because you can't really scale a large business without adding, you can't do it by yourself. And so having someone that has the leadership skills to build a team, manage a team, keep them, happy and fulfilled. And, I think of it as high performance team building, right? Get the right people in that have the right attitude and the right approach and share your, core values and buy into your mission as a company. And if you can do that effectively, that's one of the keys to becoming a successful business owner. And that's true whether it's a franchise or not. But the other aspect of it is also, getting out into the community and developing your business. So most business models, whether they're franchised or not, require some type of community development, where you're going out and getting to know people in your neighborhood and your market. Our business is no different. You've got to get out and get to meet potential referral partners like hospitals and rehab centers and other places. And so, we think of it as looking for folks that have good leadership skills and they're people persons. Like they're good at developing relationships with, other people that they can sustain over long periods of time. And those are really the two key elements. And that applies to almost any franchise out there. I think what people should be on the lookout for, or maybe a bit wary of, is that a lot of times franchises are pitched as like passive income or, semi-absentee type of business. And whether they're pitching it that way or not, very few of them really are. And even if they are able to be run in a semi-absentee way, you're not going to get the same kind of results as if you were really focused on it full time. So my advice to people when they think about, getting into franchising is if you're going to do it, do it. Don't try to, get halfway in and, keep your
Mm,
job and see if you can decide. And because that rarely works. And when it does work, it doesn't usually even work that well. And so if you really want to get the best out of it, you've really got to jump in with both feet and commit. And a lot of times when people are looking at a franchise, many of them are first-time business owners, and their objective is to have greater degree of control over their destiny. There's a lot of companies that are doing big layoffs and things like that, and people feel vulnerable because they know that at any time, if they're working at a company, the company could just decide they don't need them any longer. And so, if you're running
mm,
your own business, yeah, there are risks inherent in being in your own business, but it also is offset by the fact that you have a much greater degree of control, and you have the ability to navigate, changes in the industry and the economy and all of those kinds of things. And it's not, you're not going to wake up one day to an email that says, "Hey, you just don't have that job anymore." So that's what a lot of people are really looking for. But my advice is, if you're going to get into it and do it, go all in, because you're going to get a better result that way and raise the likelihood of your success substantially if you're, truly taking an acute focus to that project.
mm. That was a profound response. If you go get into franchising, you have to go all in, not halfway in. I got
Right.
that. I got that. So let us talk about agent. Earlier you talked about agent in place. So why is agent in place becoming so important?
Well, there's a number of reasons. Well, one of them is that just the vast population of people in their, let's say over 70 at this point, is growing significantly. And many of them find that, as they get into their 80s, typically, people start to have problems with knees and hips and other things, and it just makes it harder for them to, to get around. And again, statistically, when people are surveyed, most everyone wants to spend those, later years of their life in the home that they've always been in, or in at least their own home. And so that's really what we're solving for. It's that desire to maintain a familiar surroundings. They want to stay in their home as long as they can. There's also a significant economic advantage because there's a meaningful cost to, selling your house and, moving into a nursing home. Like, here in the US, assisted living facilities can get pretty expensive. And if you can even avoid that for a year or two by outfitting your current home with some equipment that may be able to let you stay there longer, the savings can be substantial. Like you could potentially put in, let's say, a stair lift into a home that has 2 stories for $4,000 or $5,000. Meanwhile, the cost of an assisted living facility is like $7,000 or $8,000 a month. And so, if you're able to stay home longer, you can, save a lot of money. Plus, seniors tend to just feel more connected and comfortable, in their own homes as they get older. So, it's a combination of, those lifestyle choices that I think people have, the economic advantages of staying in your own home as long as you can, and then the sheer growth of that population over the next decade or so is pretty meaningful. Like the assisted living industry will flat out tell you they can't build those facilities fast enough to accommodate everybody, and so by default, a lot of these people are going to end up staying at home because there won't be anywhere else to go.
To go. That makes sense, and I got that. So what about sales? Sales. Is sales really about relationships?
It sure is. Well, it's relationships and it's responsiveness in my mind. When you think about the consumer that needs this type of equipment, they're usually in a situation that they're dealing with for the very first time. So a lot of times, folks don't really know anything about stair lifts or platform lifts or this equipment. It's not something people have investigated or learned anything about until they need it. And so one of the key things is, being ready and being there to answer those questions. So I don't really even think of it as sales. I think of it as more of like being a guide, right? You have a need. You have, let's say, a person in your home that, can't get up and down the stairs, and that's something that you have to solve for. And so, our job is just to give you guidance and make sure that you have all of the right knowledge and understanding to make a good decision about what's the right situation for your loved one and in your home. And so if we do that effectively, it's not really sales, it's really just education. We're teaching people about the various options. Our prices are fair. They're comparable to most people in the market. And the reason people would ultimately choose, to buy from us, let's say, instead of from someone else is first, often, many times it's because we answered the phone. Like, a lot of times in our industry, people will find that, hey, if I need a stair lift, I may call 2 or 3 local dealerships or local companies that offer that. And two of them might not even answer the phone or ever call me back. That's really common in our industry. So, being available, being ready to take the call, being prepared with the information that the people need when they call in is really helpful. And then when we go out to their home, it's, and do a full evaluation. Again, that's just an extension of that education process. We're really less there to sell something, and we're more there to provide the right long-term solution for the people in that home. And, I think through the way that we go about that, explaining things, educating them about their options, not pressuring them to make decisions right away, those kinds of things. I think if you do that right and you handle customers with care, then the sales will happen. You don't have to like be good at sales per se.
If you do that right and handle customers with care, the sales will happen. I got that. So finally, my man, what advice would you give to someone who's just getting started in franchising?
If you're interested in looking into franchising, there's a lot out there. There's 4,000 different franchise concepts that you could look at, and it can get pretty confusing. So if you're just starting to explore franchising, it's actually not a bad idea to work with someone that is a franchise consultant, because they oftentimes will be able to help you evaluate your situation, what you're trying to accomplish, what your, goals are, and, what kind of businesses do they think you might actually like just based on your profile. And for someone who doesn't know about franchising, it's a little bit more difficult to figure that all out on your own. So having somebody, help you with that, and those consultants typically don't charge a fee. They get paid by the franchisor if a deal happens. So those services are typically free. That's probably the best advice I could give, is find someone that's got, good experience as a consultant to help you, because it can be really overwhelming. There's thousands and thousands of different franchises and categories and markets and industries to look at. And so having somebody help you narrow that down to maybe 4 or 5 that could potentially be the right one for you to narrow in on and focus on is a useful thing to do. And it doesn't cost anything.
Beautiful, beautiful, and I got that. So to bring this to an end, Dave, for folks who like to reach out to you, learn more about the wonderful stuff you're doing, or get to learn about franchising better from you, how can that be possible?
Yeah, the easiest way is to either find me on our website at lyftology.com and just inquire there. Or I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can just find my name. You look up Dave Pazgan on LinkedIn. I'm the only one, so you'll find me pretty easily. And feel free to connect and reach out and be happy to chat.
Beautiful. So that's going to be the end of the show, my man. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing this lovely stuff with us. It means a whole lot, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I appreciate it. Have a great one.